Hello, you're very welcome back to the Rossie podcast in association with Shannonside FM. We're here in Boyle to chat to the Roscommon U20 football manager Cian Smith about his career, his journey in football and past year with the under-20 team. Okay, Cian, thanks very much for joining me. So we might just start with the under-20 championship that's just gone by. You were appointed as the Roscommon under-20 football manager. Probably a decent campaign, in fairness. Anytime you get to a kind of final with under-20, it's very good. We might just touch on the kind of final that's just passed in the last week or so. Like a very good game of football, it has to be said. You know, a lovely evening in Tuam, and I suppose a bounce ball away, maybe a contentious decision. I know you'll probably say, and maybe a lot of other Roscommon fans will say. But how would you reflect on it, I suppose, to start off with the year?
Yeah, Darragh, overall it was a positive year. I suppose it didn't end the way we all wanted, I suppose. But we built as the year went on. I think we got better every game, culminating in the final last week. I suppose we started not ideally, but slow, 9 points down. But look, the lads were brilliant. Great heart, great determination, got back into the game. I suppose the square ball or not square ball, whatever the case may be. Look, as I said after the game, it's very hard to see from the footage, but I don't think it was a square ball. Simple as that. I thought it was a clear goal, and I suppose the reaction of the opposition players and management. There was no complaints. Nobody questioned it except the ref and umpires.
Yeah, and I think that was the one thing that nearly I always looked to see the reaction of the players, and there was no reaction from the Mayo goalkeeper, the defenders, and as you say, the Mayo management. And usually when there's maybe a possible square ball, that'll be the first thing that goes to the umpires. That's in the square. The referee will go in. Probably just felt like a decision that didn't need to be made, and I think there was about a minute and a half left. Mayo actually, even after that incident, got a point. You probably would have been looking at extra time regardless maybe if that goal had been given or not.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said as well afterwards, I think Rob Heenan's goal before it was probably more of a square ball than that one. But look, it's very tough on the lads in particular. Like, you put in such an effort to get there, and then you put in such an effort to get back into the game.
Yeah.
But look, I suppose there's other decisions over the game as well that might went our way against them, and vice versa. But yeah, it's tough to take on the lads. But again, in the overall context, it was a good year. Under-20 is a developmental age. Like, winning is a bonus. It's about getting fellas through. And now we've a group of lads that played 6 Connacht Championship matches this year, which is a great start for them.
Yeah, and you touched on it there. I suppose the main thing is obviously winning's a bonus, and would have been great to win a Connacht title and progress to the All-Ireland series. But I suppose the main thing is developing these lads that, whenever their time comes, some of them to go into a senior panel, that they have the minor development, then under-20 development, and obviously their development at their club. That's the big thing. Yeah,
absolutely. That's the key to it in my eyes. Anyway, it's. At the end of the day, the senior team is the flagship team in every county, and as much as the underage success is great, and we've had a fair bit of it, and it's brilliant for the county, brilliant for the players, at the end of the day, you're always measured on your top team. And it's, as I said, some of the lads have 6 games, competitive inter-county games under the belt. It's actually 2 or 3 of the lads have played in 2 Connacht finals in 12 months between the minors last year and this, so it's brilliant. And again, it's the same with the minor team at the moment. Minimum, they're going to have 6 games minimum. Hopefully they have more. They have 4 group stages, Connacht final, and they'll have a quarter final at least, so it's brilliant for them as well.
Yeah, and if I'm not wrong, I think a lot of that team that started against Mayo are under-20 again next year. You'll probably know better. Is there a large portion of that team that
there is. There'll be a really good chunk of them underage, and at the panel as well. Kind of it wasn't by design, just the way it happened. There would have been a lot of guys that played minor 3 years ago that aren't with us for injuries and some guys' work commitments and just not playing football, and that's a natural cycle as well. I suppose the danger is people will be talking about, you've X amount of players underage next year. It's absolutely no guarantee, as we've seen with all ages. So look, I know from talking to the lads last week, they're under no illusions what's ahead.
Yeah, because you touched on it there. I think the one that springs to mind, I think, was when Roscommon got to the All-Ireland against Offaly, and I think there was actually a large portion that were under 20 the next year, and I suppose it was high hopes. And look, you go to Markfitch Park, and I suppose a high white count, and you're one game and you're out. So there's no guarantees the next year.
No, absolutely not. And again, even Monday just gone, the Offaly under 20 hurlers, they had 11 of the starters from last year's All-Ireland winning team, and they couldn't get to Leinster semi-final.
Yeah.
So, it's basically, and that's what I said to the lads last week, leading into the games, it's all about now, it's not about next year.
Yeah, and just from a coaching perspective as well, like, getting to work with some of these lads, like there's a lot of talent in that team. Like even a player, you were mentioning other players who have been playing kind of finals, that, like say Owen Carthy at centre back, I think he's doing his leaving cert this year as well. Won a All-Ireland B colleges title with the CBS, then playing in a Connacht under 20 final, and as I said, doing his leaving cert as well. Like, it's a serious commitment from the likes of him to football and his studies this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Owen in particular, like we'd say, Owen would have played the Connacht under 20 final last year, would have played a senior county final Roscommon Gaels, would have captained CBS, and then came into us. And to be honest with you, he was one player. Obviously, Owen is a fantastic player, and he's kind of a model footballer in terms of his commitment, dedication. We were very conscious of the likes of him, not to overload him, and probably leading up to the Mayo game, the first game, we probably took a risk. He was carrying a knock, played through it with CBS, probably unfortunately, but he got through that, and he actually did very little training with us up until after the first game. And again, as you said, like, he was orals. There's other lads then had construction, practicals last week, college exams, like with two lads doing exams on Wednesday morning, down for the game. It's really tough going on them now, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. We might just focus more on yourself now, nearly taking it back. I'll start with 06 because that's, I suppose, synonymous with Roscommon football, the minor All-Ireland. You were part of that panel. We're nearly coming up 20 years. It's hard to believe it's 20 years. I think I was at the game in Ennis when I was about 7 or so. It's one of those famous days that everyone remembers, and I'm sure it's one of the great days you've had.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, that was a great year. It was kind of stuff you dream of in terms of, for myself, playing the minor panel, coming on in games, beating Galway the first day, and then kind of final against Mayo, and we went then to Prairie Meath and Croke Park obviously against Kerry, and it really was a dream come true, and you learn so much from it, and you've great memories of it. And I think one thing I'd say is we have great friendships from that team. Still, we don't, there'd be a lot of lads would be very, 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 very tight together. We would have a lot of lads who went to college together, played under 21s, and let some lads went onto the senior panel, and we'd say there's a good bond, and it's hard to believe it's 20 years. Yeah,
because if I'm not wrong, like that team kind of maybe grew as the year went on, because I think you know better again, because I was young at the time, maybe that you were actually underdogs in a lot of those games, along the way, maybe if not every game nearly up to that All Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there was famous games that winter. I know they're only challenge games, but like we went to Armagh and we got an unmerciful hiding. We played Laois the same. We just struggled in general. And then we were lucky against Galway the first day. Kevin Higgins took a shot and was kind of semi-deflected, and the goalie let it bounce through his hands, and all of a sudden we're up and running.
Yeah.
And from then on, we got a little bit of notice and a bit more credit, but going into every game we were underdogs. Obviously culminating Kerry, there's a high possibility. You're always going to be underdogs against Kerry in another final.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you came on in Croke Park. I don't think you got on in Ennis.
No. Yeah. I came on in. I came on the kind of final, and I came on the quarter final, came on semi-final, came on the final in Croke Park, and I was about to come on in Ennis, and then chaos.
Yeah. It's probably one of those. It's a blur because, geez, I think there was how many Roscommon 15,000-20,000 down in Ennis. It was absolute bedlam, and to be honest, you've probably not seen scenes like that at a minor final since then. I can't remember a football final anyways, maybe Offaly winning the under 20 recently, similar scenes, but it just shows how much it meant to the people of Roscommon.
It was mad. One thing I always remember is we always arrive an hour and 15 or an hour and 20 before the match, and you throw your gear bag in and you walk around the pitch. And normally, particularly back then, the minor was on before the senior. So we'd arrive into the stadiums and there'd be nobody there. But I remember that day in Ennis. Now I know it was a standalone fixture. There was a funny story actually. There was Clare Senior Hurling Championship on afterwards.
Yes. Yeah.
We were in the dressing room celebrating winning All Ireland, and there was some guy from Clare telling us, "Get out, lads! The championship started." Like madness. But we arrived in Ennis, and it was bedlam getting off the bus, and we walked in and threw our bags in and went out onto the pitch. And I remember, like, we were literally an hour and 15 minutes walking around, looking at the pitch, or whatever, and there might have been 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people at that stage, and all was coming.
Yeah, and like even, you know, obviously the scenes afterwards, then coming back to Roscommon town as well, and I think if I see the pictures right, there was an open top bus nearly.
Yeah, we got back to the Hyde and so open top bus, and it was lashing rain, but no one cared. And I remember coming around the corner up onto the main street, and it was just pandemonium, and there was a stage then up at the top of the square, and it was brilliant. It was brilliant. We celebrated it well now, I have to say.
Because that's it, you're only young lads, you're, 17, 18, and it's like you're, plummeted into this, stardom in Roscommon for however many weeks. And you know what, I said it's Roscommon's last All-Ireland win at any age level. So, of course it's going to still be remembered. It says nearly 20 years on.
Yeah, and I suppose one thing as well, because the senior team mightn't have been going as well at the time, probably helped in that people, and same in every county, you see it now, Cork and the hurling, they're going well, everyone jumps on. We started, there might have been 2,000 people in the first game against Galway, and all of a sudden we win and it's pandemonium. But it was brilliant. But yeah, it's hard to believe it's 20 years. Yeah,
and I suppose the exposure that yourselves got, maybe even when Roscommon got to a couple of under-21 finals in 2 and 3 years. You're probably not getting that nowadays, because I suppose they're taking the minor finals away before Connacht finals and All Ireland finals, and maybe even under 20 games now being stuck on Wednesday nights and that. The likes of yourselves, even Enda, Donny, all those players that played in maybe between 06 to say 2016 or whatever, the exposure you got on big match days before senior games, it's hard to beat that.
Oh, absolutely. And I always remember the 2006 minor final. Mayo played Galway in the senior final afterwards. And I always remember Fergal O'Donnell said to us before the game, or leading up to it, he'd say, right, because our Galway game was in the Hyde, standalone on a Friday evening, so there was a small crowd, it was fine. This was obviously Sunday before a Connacht final, and Fergal would always say to us, when you come out for the second half, there's going to be 2 or 3 times more Mayo supporters than you went in. And we're like, kind of not realising. And lo and behold, in that second half, when they started getting into it, it really is. I remember coming on and you're shouting at somebody and you can't hear anything.
Because it's changed times now. It felt like even then, I suppose after the minors, maybe in 07, like maybe Donny Shine, Conor Devaney, a few of those went straight into a senior panel. Like 18, 19, you would have seen it even with Enda and Donny as well. They went in young. That's not really happening nowadays. It seems like maybe under 20s, that was minor. Like under 20s now even feel maybe a tiny bit away from a senior panel.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember in 2006, I'm nearly sure in 2007, we played Monaghan in the first round of the National League, possibly, and I think there was 7 or 8 of the lads playing.
Yeah.
Now, probably like I said, because the seniors weren't going so well, maybe it was needed.
Yeah.
I think John Mahon was the senior manager. You'd probably give a lot of credit to him for introducing the lads, but some would say maybe it's too soon. Whereas now, I think our seniors are going well. It's definitely a bigger step up for us in Roscommon, but I'd say in general, there's very few playing under 20 and senior at the same time, very few.
Yeah. So I suppose your own story then, after 06, going into 07 then, and I suppose maybe the cancer diagnosis, that come, was it late 07, was it? Or?
Yeah, October 07. Yeah. It was, I did the leaving cert in 2005. So I had a great summer in 06. I was working in Ulster Bank in Athlone. I was literally professional football, it was brilliant. Yeah. So then I was working in permanent TSB in Maynooth. in '07, and playing club football. I was around the under 21 panel at the time, and I was happy out. And every so often I'd wake up and I'd yawn or swallow or breathe heavily, as you would, and I have a little pain in my throat. Now, I didn't pass any heat. Yeah. Again, I never in hospital, never sick, nothing. So it was going on and on. I was still playing with Boyle and no issues whatsoever. And my dad is an auctioneer in Boyle, same as I am now, but he sold a house at the time in Boyle to an ENT consultant in Sligo Hospital. And every time he used to drive by our house, he'd call in to say hello to my dad. Yeah. So there was this Friday evening, I was training with Boyle, and I wasn't driving or something in the car, but one of my friends dropped me to the house, and I don't know why, but I went in the back door into the kitchen, and he happened to be there, and I was talking to him, small talk, and he says, "Oh, geez, Cian, you're a bit hoarse." Yeah. And I said, "Yeah, it's grand." And he goes, "Oh, I'll bring you for a checkup." And I said, "I know you're grand." "Oh, no, I will. So anyway, I went out for a shower or whatever, and the man left. I came back about an hour or two later, and I said to Dad, "I'm going for no checkup, I'm fine." Yeah. And he said, "Look, it'll be grand, we'll see what happens." So about 2 weeks later, I got a letter, an appointment. And I was in Maynooth at the time working, and Dad says, "Oh, there's an appointment here for Sligo." I said, "I'm not going." Dad said, "Look, Dad's kind of all thinking the bigger picture. He's a good customer. You never know, he might buy something again. Go down, it'll be no big deal."
Yeah.
So I said, "Oh, sound." So down I went, and that was August '07, and he put his little camera up my nose and down my throat, and he said, "Yeah, there's a bit of redness and a bit of swelling on your vocal cords," and he referred me to a guy in Eccles Street in Dublin. So again, I was like, "Oh, jeez, do I have to go to this?" So anyway, eventually went up with my mum, and the guy did the same, a camera up, and he said to me he wanted to do a biopsy. So I said, fine. So I went up and did a biopsy in St Vincent's Hospital in Dublin under Professor Angus Curran. He'd have his wife would be from Tibone originally. So lovely man. Anyway, so we did a biopsy on me, and I was sent home, and that was it. That was on a Tuesday. Now the following Friday, I got a phone call to say they wanted to do a second biopsy. And again, I was like, fine, no problem. I was just wanted to just play football essentially. Yeah. So that was on a Friday, and on the Sunday, I played a championship, under 21 championship for Boyle against St Bridget's. I was fine, I thought it was fine, no problem. I went up with my dad on Tuesday to the hospital in St Vincent's, had the biopsy, and woke up in the recovery room, and I was fine. And I was wheeled back into the ward, and I was kind of full of anesthetics, you were tired, I was lying around. And then I kind of came around at about 5 o'clock, 5:30, and I woke up, and my mum was there as well. So my mum and dad were there, and I was like, all right. I was like, maybe mum gave me the train, and this is planned. I was 19, I kind of didn't care. So that was fine. So I was waiting for the doctors to do the rounds to come in and get me out of there, basically. And at 7 o'clock, as usual, doctors came in, and because Vincent's is a teaching hospital, there's always loads of doctors. There must have been 10 came into the close. So the Professor Curran says to me, "Oh, you have an infection of your cells in your throat." And I said, "Yeah, fair enough." And Dad was like, no, tell him what, like. He said, "Oh, you have cancer in your throat." And I was kind of stunned. I was like, "Jeez." So I actually turned around and I said, "Right, just get it out of me." And he's like, "Look, we'll talk tomorrow. Rest up tonight, blah, blah." So he left then, and obviously Mum and Dad were there, and my mother's very emotional, and I kind of was like, "Jeannie, what'll happen now?" But little did I know, I was the last to know. So bringing up for the second biopsy, straight away, my dad, his kind of ears pricked, there's something wrong. They told Dad before I knew. So my dad told my mum, obviously she came straight up, told my brothers, told my then girlfriend Michelle, she's my wife now, told my friends, and Dad told them, "Don't contact me until after 8 or half 8. So I was lying in bed and in the hospital, this bad news, and I was kind of coming to terms with it, but I didn't really know what to do. And then all of a sudden at half 8 my phone blows up, and all the lads texting and ringing, and so that was maybe middle of October, and then I had a hemi-laryngectomy on 31st of October. Basically, half my voice box and vocal cords were removed. It was a stage 3 tumour on my left vocal cord, so it was 2 millimetres on my right vocal cord. So they removed that 7 hours 45 in theatre doing this operation, and then I had radiotherapy just in case they missed anything, because I was so close to the right vocal cord.
Yeah.
So I was in hospital for a good while. I suppose October. I was out in December, and I was in and out then for 3 or 4 months for radiotherapy, and here I am.
Yeah, because I mean, it's such a long haul, but I suppose, any cancer diagnosis, whatever age you are, is tough. I suppose, like as you said, 19, the year before you're playing football, working away, enjoying life, and then I suppose I'm sure it's just a massive shock to the system, and it probably even just takes a while to fully maybe understand what's going on in some ways. I could imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was 19. I was playing for Boyle. I was happy out. Not a bother on me. Again, sore throat the odd time, but like I should take too desperate and get on with it.
Yeah.
But no, it was obviously, needless to say, it was life changing. It was a big change for everybody, I suppose. My parents, like, I'm the oldest of 4, so Ronan is a few years younger than me, and then Donny, and then Enda. Like, Enda and Donny were still in national school. So, and I was in Vincent's. Mum was working, Dad is working. It was tough at that time for all the family, and look, we've great family and great friends. Everyone wrote in. Again, my then girlfriend Michelle, her family, they were brilliant, and cousins, and some of my friends in Dublin, just basically there was never an evening in Vincent's when I didn't have company, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, and I suppose then, like footballing wise, you actually, I don't know, did you take a break for long, I suppose, during the treatment but you actually did play on after that?
So it was kind of a running battle with Professor Kern. Every time I see him, I'd be, when can I go back playing? And he'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I was like just obsessed with football. So I always remember there was a guy from outside Boyle, managing Boyle Intermediates at the time, and I went down training one night, maybe in April 2008. And when I think back, it's madness. But I went down anyway, and I remember jogging a lap or something at the training pitch at Boyle, and I could not breathe. And I always remember when the players came over to me and goes, Rome wasn't built in a day, relax. And it was great to be back involved with the lads. Didn't really think about I'd be playing. I got back from 1 or 2 championship games, and really it turns out roughly a year to the day I came on in the intermediate final in 2008 against Kilbride. We drew, I scored a goal and we drew, and then we were beaten in the replay the week after. But that was a big milestone. I was delighted myself. The thing is, I have 1 vocal cord, so the problem is getting the air in is the problem. Yeah. So I used to get very, very frustrated. My brain didn't know what I want to do, and I just wasn't physically able to do it. Now, I was never the fastest anyway, but now I'd half a yard of pace, now I'd no pace. So it was tough to get used to that, but look, I still played. I played under 21 with Boyle the next year. Played on, we struggled during Boyle there. We were messing around for years, intermediate, and couldn't get out of groups, and we're kind of waiting for Tony, Killian Cox, and these lads to come, and we're there plodding along in intermediate, again, not doing a whole pile, to be honest. And then I think it was 2011, I played an FPD game for Roscommon Seniors. I came on in against GMIT when the college drew it in Ballyforan. And it's only an FPD game in January, but I was delighted with myself just even to play that level, to say I played a half competitive game. And then I suppose 13, 12 we lost intermediate semi-final against St. Aidan's, who won it. 13 then we came back and won the intermediate, which was brilliant. Enda was 18 midfield, I was centre forward, Tony was full forward, Sean Purcell was playing, we had a really good team. Lost the Connacht intermediate final that year to Kiltale, I think it's Kiltale from Mayo, but I knew my breathing was catching up on me. There was training sessions where I'd be marking Sean Purcell, and I'd be very, very close to Sean, and he'd say like, "Are you alright?" Yeah. I was breathing. Even during games, competitive games, the fella would be marking and be looking at me, and I just couldn't breathe essentially. Yeah. But I was too stubborn to stop.
Yeah. Well, that's it, and like it's kind of remarkable, really. After that, journey to actually, I didn't even know that you actually played for Roscommon.
Yeah, now if you did.
Well, I suppose still though, you have that, as you said there, whatever level it is, and I suppose after what you've been through to actually get on the field for Roscommon at whether it be FBD, Connacht, All Ireland, that's something to have. And then I suppose 2013. Enda was just probably just up with me. Yeah. So to have that as well, that to win an intermediate, but I suppose to all three of you play together, it's something special to look back on.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was a brilliant year for the club. I suppose their team won the minor Division 1, I think, in 11 or 12. They're a really good team. First time the club ever won a Division 1 minor. So they were coming through. Yeah. Won that, and then in 14, then I knew I was on the way out. So in 14 then we played senior. I actually played in goals for the year. Now, catching ball, kick-outs, I was okay. We won't talk about the shot stopping.
You invented before Ethan Rafferty and all these kids.
I don't know that now, but as I said, I wasn't the fastest, so my agility getting out of corners wasn't too hectic. But look, I could kick the ball, so it was fine. Yeah. So I played that year in goals. We stayed up. And then in October, November 14, I got the tracheostomy tube put into my to help me breathe. To be honest, Professor Curran over all those years, and I'd be going back first of all it was every month, then every 2 months, then every 3 months, then every 6 months. So I've been in and out of St. Vincent's all the time with him. Right. And he would have always said to me, like, "Geez, you're mad playing, be careful." Because his whole thing was, God forbid if I got knocked out or got a bang to the head, and I went down, and no one knew that I had a narrow airway, that anything could happen. So he was all saying to me, think about giving up. And then when I went in goals and told him that was it, he decided, right, look, for your quality of life, we're putting in a tracheostomy tube. You'll have to stop playing anyway. Yeah. Now, that brought its own challenges in terms of, look, to be blunt about it, it's a plastic tube sticking out of your neck. It's hard to get used to at 27, whatever it was then, or 26 it was then. So again, I spent 7, 8, 9 weeks in St. Vincent's after getting that in, just learning about it. It's really, obviously, it's invasive. You have to manage it, it's care, you change the tube twice a day or once a day, whatever. I had to learn how to swallow again. Learn how to speak with it, I have a speaking valve on it, just things like that. So that really, I know this might sound a bit mad, but I found that tougher than the actual cancer. Yeah. Because in my head, the cancer was literally, they did an operation to take it out, it was gone. And there was no managing after it. My voice was a bit low, I couldn't breathe when I ran. But other than that, I got on with it. Whereas this, it's kind of always there, and it is what it is. I go back to St. Vincent's still every 6 weeks to get this changed, and I wouldn't say a bad word about anybody in St. Vincent's or any of the medical professions. They've been brilliant. Unfortunately, Professor Curran is no longer with us. He was a great man. Did all my surgeries. I'd say I was probably 9 or 10 years under him, and you get to know him, and he was very good to me and my parents. I know he would have did a bit extra with them about the whole shock of someone 19 having throat cancer and things like that. It was one story around that time, actually. It was funny. I was getting my radiotherapy in St. Vincent's, and Ronnie Drew from the Dubliners was getting radiotherapy at the same time for the same thing. Right. But as he said to me, the difference was he was 70 or 75 and had his life. I was 19. But no, again, like I said, I found the tracheostomy the toughest, and even still, I'm still getting used to it all these years later.
And 2014, then I think was it a testimonial they had? Was it 2014? Probably a lovely day for yourself and your family and that. And I think there was even a selection of the lads from 06 that came. But a mixture of club mates, county teammates as well. A nice thing to have.
It was brilliant. Yeah, that was a very good friend of mine, Mark O'Donoghue, and Liam Conroy, 2 lads from Boyle here, decided, look, we'll do something. And I remember I was away on holidays with Michelle, and I remember Mark was on to me, look, there's a game this weekend in November. It's a Boyle selection against a Roscommon selection. Fergal O'Donnell managed the Roscommon selection. David Casey managed the Boyle selection. And they said, you'll play the first half of Boyle, second half of Roscommon. And I said, yeah, grand. Didn't think much of it. And then, as we got closer to it, then we decided any funds raised on the gate, we'd split them with the Mayo Roscommon Hospice, and then the Kyle Casey Fund at the time. Kyle is a young lad from he's actually Ballinameen Club, lives near French Park, lovely fella. Kyle was sick at the time as well, so we said we'd split the funds, whatever. And it turned out all the 06 lads came down. They even brought the minor cup, I don't know who had it at the time, Kerry probably, that arrived. All the Boyle lads played, friends, a cousin of mine from Cavan who played Cavan or two, and he played. Geez, we had a great day in Boyle. It was a huge crowd, and we had a good night after it as well. And it turned out I think we split 6,000 or 7,000 between. Right, so basically we raised 13,000 or 14,000 essentially. Yeah. It was a brilliant day, and that's, I couldn't thank Mark and Liam especially in organising that, and everyone that played. It was a great day.
Yeah. So obviously you're now you're in the coaching scene, but Enda and Donny are still with the county team. Like, for yourself and your parents, and obviously your other brother Ronan, what's it like, watching the lads play? Because in fairness to them, they've been there however many years, 10, 11, 12 years with the senior team. That's not even that's excluding the underage thing. So how are you watching it, even after a game? Are you being critical? Is it analysing it, watching them on the field?
It's fun. I was thinking about this today. It's funny, at the start, when the lads would have went in with the seniors, I'd say every single training session, I'd be texting how much I was training. I was just mad to know. And I'd say that I was bursting their heads. And after games then I'd be talking. But no, in fairness, the one thing about it is with the lads, even up to now still, obviously I don't ask them as much now, because number one, they wouldn't tell you, which is I understand. And number two, I would say between family and my own things going on, I don't have time to. But they'd ask my opinion on certain things. Sometimes I should give it anyway, whether they like it or not. But to be honest, we'd always be proud of them over the years going to the games. I suppose, particularly for Mum and Dad, it can be nerve-wracking, the big games. But again, I suppose at this stage they're used to them in turn. Like, the boys have played minor, under 20 and senior kind of finals. Yeah. All Ireland finals, they played one each, under 20, so under 21. So they're well used to it, but at times it can be tough, when I suppose, thankfully it hasn't happened too much in the last few years, but when you're at a game and somebody says something, like, I just do my best not to bite back or that. Now, when I was younger, I would have bitten back and I'd be a bit looser, I suppose. But look, at the end of the day, Donny or all the other lads that play for Roscommon, they don't go out to make mistakes, and to have people shouting at them, madness. But look, I can't be what they've done in their careers so far, and hopefully more to come for the two of them. You can't be proud of them.
Because you touched on it there, and do you know what? Like, even in the stands, like, you would be conscious because, like, there's friends, there's family, and like these lads are, they're amateurs, and you said there, like, no one puts on a Roscommon jersey to go out and lose. And unfortunately, there has been some bad days, there's been some great days, but no one goes out to lose. And I suppose it's just reminding people that that these lads will play on, and it's for every county as well, they'll play on the Saturday, Sunday, and you're back to work on the Monday. So, like, everyone has the best interest of Roscommon at heart, whether you're in the stand or on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the work that goes into it in terms of the prep and individually and everything else, they're all put so much into it that if you have a bad day, they feel worse than anyone else does.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I just want to touch as well on the AIB documentary in 2017. Again, a lovely thing, because it's very rare that you actually see anything in a county setup. As you said, the lads won't even tell you a lot of things now. There's a lot of secrecy nowadays, and access to players. We won't get fully into that. But 2017, they won Connacht, but I was shown in the documentary. I think Kevin McStay got them to do maybe a presentation or maybe talk about, why they play. And we were showing on at the, end, spoke about your family and yourself. And, he referred to that, 90% of the reason why he plays is nearly on behalf of you. So like moments like that, even to look back on, and after on the pitch as well, it was caught on camera, yourself and Enda, but lovely things to be able to look back on as a family.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, go back to that, like no one knew in our house that they were doing that documentary.
Yeah.
I think they were down in our house videoing one day, and Mum and Dad were away. Like no one knew what was going on. But yeah, look, it's lovely. I suppose it's not something, as I suppose men or brothers like the end is not coming up telling me that. Yeah. That just doesn't happen, and that's fine too. And if that helped him in any way, 100% I'd be delighted. Like whatever has to be done, we'll help them. But it was, you said, it's a nice memory to have. It's nice that it's there. I suppose it's always something that we'll always have, hopefully, for the next 30, 40 years. But when I saw it, I was taken aback. I was shocked, to be honest. But it was nice.
Yeah, because I'm sure you had that close relationship, and that highlighted it there. That I suppose they would have looked up to you. Even from 2006 and playing with Boyle through the years, and then obviously the moment in 2013 winning the intermediate. But I suppose they'll have seen the journey that you've gone on, and I suppose not getting to play with Boyle and Roscommon anymore, that probably filters into it.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, like they were very young. They were very young when I was sick, and it couldn't have been easy. Like I said, Mum and Dad were up and down the road to Dublin, and the lads are still brought to school and things like that. So look, they've been there for it all. They've seen everything that's gone on. So yeah.
I know as well in 2019 you were recognised, I think the Dermot Early Award, if I'm right. Again, another lovely memory to have, as a collective as well, as an entire family, up in Croke Park.
Yeah, that was brilliant actually. That was a really special one. Again, it came out of the blue. We got a letter from, I think, Christy Cooney, who was the GA president, and you're kind of looking at it and says, someone taking the mickey. But no, we got a phone call from Croke Park then, and I was really delighted for Mum and Dad in that, because like my mother would have, she was treasurer of the club, secretary of the club, brought us to every dogfight going, and Dad played football all his life, and then administrator of the club, secretary, played, managed teams. He was county minor selector of the years, he was county board treasurer for a year or two. And again, like that has been going up and down the country, literally going to our games and bring the lads the games in the last few years. So we got that. It was a really nice honour. We had a great night in Dublin. Neighbours, friends, people from the club here came up, and it was a really, really good night.
Yeah, and just touching on it, probably another special night when Enda got the All-Star as well a couple of years ago. And it probably made it actually nicer that, how they alternate the years, whether the day before it's announced in the morning that Enda actually was announced, but you didn't know going up. Another fantastic night for yourselves, Boyle, but I suppose the whole county, because we hadn't won an All-Star since Francie Grehan in 2001. There's not many people in Roscommon that have All-Stars.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a brilliant one. When he was nominated previously, we kind of knew he probably wouldn't win. He just, he went up for a night. It was great. You were always kind of thinking, geez, he might. I'd be following myself. He'd be in the reckoning, but you never quite know. And then I suppose Thursday night, Tony texted me to say that someone had told him that Enda had it, but don't say Enda. So obviously he didn't say anything. And then Friday morning, someone else said to me, "Oh no, he's definitely got it." And you want to believe it, but you don't want to believe it.
Yes.
And I actually didn't go to the All-Stars, to be honest. It was Mum and Dad went up and things like that, and I'm literally at home watching it. And my son Killian, that was 2 or 3 years ago. Killian is 7 now, or 6 now, so he was 3 and 4, and he stayed up late to watch this, and he thought this was the best ever. Yeah. And then it was really good. The next day, then he came back, and we had a big night out from here in Boyle, and then on the Sunday the club opened up the clubhouse and all the kids came in for photographs, and it was a really good weekend though.
Yeah, just to finish up, Cian, obviously you were the manager of the under-20 football team this year. You've had previous experience with clubs, obviously Boyle as well, close in a couple of county finals. You know, what's the future hold for yourself in terms of coaching? Is the hunger and desire as strong as it was, a few years ago?
Yeah, look, it's a funny one. Everyone would have always said I would have got into it because I was so into it when I played. And I suppose even when I was playing, I would have managed a few Boyle under 21 teams. I would have, Fergal O'Donnell would have brought me in his minor panel the second year. Just been there looking and seeing what's going on. And Mark Dowd had me the same with the under 20s, 21s and 15, 16. And then I would have done DIT, the Sigerson Cup. I was coaching there when I was living in Dublin. And came home then, and I was Collares, Trantown and Sligo senior, and then I did a year with Kilmore, which was brilliant. And then the Boyle job became available, and look, I never said no to my own club. So I had 4 relatively good years of Boyle. Didn't get where we wanted to get to, but we had great times. But the future, at the moment now, my only coaching concern is I owe a training session to the Boyle under 12 manager, so that's the next one coming. And look, we'll take a break. It's good to take a break as well, and I'm really looking forward to going around watching club games at all grades and all levels. Just seeing how it goes. Kind of going to club games, not looking at teams for Boyle, and we'll see. Then I'll have to speak to the county board on that, and hopefully we'll see about the under 20s for next year.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you the very best of luck, and thanks very much for your time.
No matter. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.